In this video, I'm going to go over 20 different hotkeys that I think every beginner Photoshop user should know. Let's check it out. Welcome to day 10 of our 30 days of Photoshop. My name is Jason Ortega with Blending Graphics, and for today's episode, I'm going to go over 20 different hotkeys that I think all beginning Photoshop users should know. And I know that after watching this video, I'm going to get a lot of comments saying, Jason, why didn't you add this key? Or why didn't you put this one in there? And you know what? This is all about my personal preference and just keys that I use most often and are different keys that I think are going to be very useful for any new beginning user for Photoshop. And for those that are joining us today for the very first time, just to give you a quick recap, we're doing 30 days of Photoshop, giving you a different video each day, and today we're on day number 10. If you like this video and you want to see more of it and want to continue this journey with us, please be sure to hit that subscribe button and click that bell icon so you can see more of this in the future. Alright, let's go ahead and jump right into that composition that we're going to be working with for these 20 hotkeys. Now, I'm a big Avatar fan, so I thought this would be a fun composition to work in. I also wanted to break this up into a couple of different sections here to help make things a little bit easier as I explain these hotkeys. This first section that we're going to be working with is going to be primarily about brush settings and colors and using things like that. Our second section, which is going to be the larger section, is going to be more about layers and groups and all of the different components to that side of Photoshop. And then the third section is just going to be a couple of extra throw-in hotkeys that I think are very relevant. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to go to the left side by the tool panel, and as you scroll over each one of these tools, you can see the hotkey associated with that individual tool. And I'm not going to be talking so much about the tools themselves, except for maybe just a couple of them. I want to direct our attention more on other features within Photoshop, but I just wanted to at least let you know if you're unaware of what the hotkey is for a certain tool, you can just scroll over that on the left side and you should be able to find that yourself. I also want to preface this by saying I'm currently working on a Mac laptop. So all of these hotkeys that I say, I'll be using the Mac version. I'll be saying Command instead of Control or Option instead of Alt. So just bear that in mind throughout this video as we talk about these different hotkeys. Okay, let's go ahead and start things off here. I have a new layer above all of my different groups within my composition. And I know I said I'm not going to talk too much about the tools, but there are a couple. And the first one that we're going to talk about is the brush tool. And you can bring that up by pressing B on your keypad. And you can see that my cursor has changed. Now if I paint around, you can clearly see that we're using the brush tool, and I'm using that foreground color at the bottom left of our screen. From here, if you want to change the size of the brush tip, if you press the left bracket key, you can shrink that down, or the right bracket key, and you can expand that brush tip. So since you know how to activate the brush tool, you should know how to bring up the eraser tool as well. So let's just paint something back in here. And if you press E on your keyboard, we can bring up our eraser tool. And I know just by looking at the screen and the cursor, you can't really tell that we switched into the eraser tool. However, if you look at the top left of the screen, our brush icon has now turned into the eraser icon. So that's an easy way to establish which tool that we're currently working with. And just like the brush tool, we can also change the size of our tip here by using the left or right bracket keys to do so. And we'll make sure our opacity is set at 100%, and then we'll just go ahead and erase this part that we brushed on. In general, Photoshop lets us pick between two colors at a time. And those two colors are either going to be your foreground color or your background color. And if we come down to the bottom left corner of the screen, you can see those two different color swatches that I'm talking about. The one on top is going to be your foreground color, and the one on the back is going to be your background color. Now you can toggle between these two selected colors by pressing the arrow icon just above them on the right side. And you can see that toggles between the two, flipping between foreground and background. Or if you press X on your keypad, you can toggle it manually that way as well. And right now, I selected these two colors myself. And if you want to go to the default colors, which are black and white, all you have to do is press D on your keypad. So D will go ahead and toggle that, and you can see now it's switched to black and white. So just to show you working with white, we'll paint that on there, press X, and now we switch to black. And we can get rid of that. So throughout this whole time so far, you've seen me being able to undo all these different commands. And that's going to be what we talk about next, which is the undo or redo hotkeys. And this is going to be a function that I can almost guarantee you will be the hotkeys that you use most often. At least I know it is for me. So what we can do here is we can just paint back some of this black that we already have on our foreground, paint that in. And then if you press Command Z, that will undo that step. And if you want to do the opposite of that, which is the redo key, just press Shift Command Z, and that'll go back. You also have the option if you want to go back multiple steps. So if you keep pressing Command Z over and over, you'll just continue to go back each step at a time. Now, you are limited to the amount of times that you can use that undo feature to go back each step. However, we can change that. If we go to Photoshop and then come down to Preferences in General, and then go down to where it says Performance, and then over to History States, from here you can click on that box and drag this anchor left or right to either increase or decrease the amount of steps that you can use this undo feature. All right, so let's go ahead and cancel out of this box and we'll get out of it. And we're now going to talk about colors for a second here. As you can see that our default foreground background colors are the black and white. And let's say we want to use a color to add on to this composition. And so sometimes the best thing that we can do is activate our eyedropper tool, which helps us select any color from our composition currently, and then we can use that as like a stepping stone as to which color we should select. So to bring up your eyedropper tool, go ahead and just press I on your keyboard. And once you do that, you'll see our cursor is now changed to our little eyedropper icon. So say we want to add some additional glow to this energy orb that we got going on. We can sample one of these blues to choose from. So maybe something like this one here. From here, we can just go up to our opacity meter and come all the way down to about 10%, something nice and soft. And we'll just do a couple of dabs around here just to help brighten this up a little bit and give it some more glow. So something like that looks good. And then we can just see the before and after of just something like that and how easy it was to use that eyedropper tool to select that blue. But let's take this a step further. Let's say we want to go ahead and just tweak up some of the rocks that are in our picture here. So the first thing that we want to do is, depending on which rock we're working with, we want to find that layer within our composition. And let's say we want to work with this bottom rock here. So within that group at the bottom, we'll scroll all the way down inside it and we'll click on that layer. And maybe all what we really want to do with this is just either move it a little bit or rotate it slightly. If you go ahead and press Command T on your keyboard, that'll bring up the transform box. And then from here, all we have to do is just move our cursor to just outside of that box and click and drag, and now we can rotate the object if that's what we want to do. So let's go ahead and just cancel that. And let's say now what we want to do is just be able to paint on this rock alone and do some additional tweaking. If you go ahead and Command and click on that rock layer icon, that will load up a selection of the rock, and now we will be confined to just that area alone to work in. And with the new layer created, if you press B on your keypad, you can bring up the brush tool again, and from here you can just touch up any area of this rock that you want. This is really nice too, after the fact, you've maybe merged all of these layers together and you're about to send it through the camera raw filter, but you want to touch up one spot of this rock first. It's easy to go in, Command and click on that rock, and then you can just do some touching up that way. It helps really isolate things. Okay, so now we have finished doing our touch-ups and we can get rid of those little marching ants along the edges of this rock. From here, all you have to do is press Command D and that will deselect that layer. And to just recap, if you Command and click on that layer, that will load up a selection. Command D will deselect. Let's move on and let's talk a little bit about grouping layers. Grouping layers is a great way to keep yourself organized, especially when you have a lot of similar contents that you want to keep together. So this rock, for example, has a lot of clipped layers all leading up to this rock. And we want to group that together just to keep everything nice and neat. If you click on that first layer that we want to have grouped, and then scroll down to the last layer, and while holding Shift, if you click on that layer, you'll highlight all those layers that you want selected, and then press Command G, and that will group those layers together. So again, click on the layer that you want, Shift and click at the bottom layer to highlight them all, Command G will group them together. And then if you want to ungroup that, just press Shift Command G. So Command G to group, and then Shift Command G to ungroup. Let's go ahead and double click the title and we'll give it a new name. And what we want to do now is we love how this rock looks, but we want another one to use somewhere else in this composition. And we want to duplicate this group. If you click on the group and make sure that it's highlighted, then you can press Command J and that will create a duplicate of this group for you to use anywhere else in this picture. With that new group duplicated, we can now press Command T to bring up the transform box, and now we can drag this around or rotate it or move this wherever we want within this picture. Let's delete this and kind of get out of everything. And we want to click on the group that has all of the rocks in it. And you can see if we turn this on and off that we have them all. And we're going to create a duplicate of this. So press Command J, and that'll take a second. Now, I'm someone that loves to have a lot of groups, and I don't like to merge a lot of my layers together just because I'm always paranoid that I might need to run back to a specific object to work in it a little bit, and I want to be able to have that option. But for some of you, maybe you don't like to do that, and maybe you like to just have everything merged together so you have a lot less layers to work with. And now we're just going to assume that you are this kind of person. So let's first turn off this bottom group. And we're going to go into this group itself just to see all the different properties. You can see all of the different groups that are in this together. And we'll get back to this. If you press Shift Command G to ungroup all of those. And now we want to merge all of this into one single layer. If you press Command E, that will merge all of that into one individual layer. And now you no longer have all of those separate groups. So some advantages of doing it this way are now you have less layers to work with. And your document size will also be smaller. The drawbacks, however, are you are now committed to these changes and you can no longer go back into any of those groups to do any final tweaking. Plus, with more layers and groups, your file size is going to be larger as well. Another thing we can do is if we go back to just one group, and if you press Command E with that highlighted, you can merge all of those groups together into one. So you don't necessarily have to go into each individual group and then highlight all those layers. You can just click on the group itself, press Command E to merge it that way. Let's move on and let's talk about clipping masks for a second. If you're new to clipping masks and not really sure what they are, long story short, they're a great way to apply an effect to an individual layer or a group of layers for that matter. And for example, what we can do with all of these rocks in this picture, let's say we want to brighten them all up just a little bit more. We can come down to our adjustments layer and we're going to scroll all the way up to where it says exposure and we're going to click on exposure. And right now, if we move this anchor left or right, we're affecting all of the layers below this adjustment layer. But we only want it to affect just the rocks alone. So an easy way to achieve this would be if you hover in between these two layers and hold down the Alt or Option key and you click on that, that will create a clipping mask to affect only the rocks. So now, if I toggle this on and off, you see that exposure adjustment layer is affecting the rocks alone. The other way to achieve this would be to right-click on the layer, scroll down to where it says Create Clipping Mask, and then click on that. But by holding down the Alt or Option key, you can take that step out. And essentially, it's the lazy way of doing things. But you know what? I'm okay with that. All right, let's get back to our composition here. And anytime you add an adjustment layer, it automatically comes with a layer mask. And if you click on that layer mask, and if you press Command I, that will invert that mask and change everything from white to black and vice versa. So anything that's white will be visible, anything that's black will be hidden. So let's say we don't want all of the rocks to have that high of an exposure, and we only want to make just a little adjustment. So instead of having the layer mask turn to white, we can press Command I to invert that and then just paint some of that light that we want shown back in. And I know this video is more about hotkeys, but that's a nice little freebie tip for you. All right, we only have a couple hotkeys left, so let's get out of this and get back to our final image that we have. And we're going to talk about probably the second most common hotkey that you're going to use next to the undo key. And this is going to be zooming in and out. To zoom in, all you have to do is press Command plus. And to zoom out, you press Command minus. And it's as easy as that. And from here, as you can see right now, we have our rulers turned on. You can see at the top here and off to the side. If you press Command R, that will toggle it off or on. So if it's off, you press Command R to bring it on, Command R to turn it off. And I personally like to always have my rulers turned on just because I like to work with guides a lot of the time. And to bring a guide in, if you just click and drag from the ruler, doesn't matter left or right, you can bring in guides this way. So let's take this one off that I currently have. And let's just say I want to center this up and work off of something like this. Well, if I press Command and the semicolon key, that will turn on and off these guides. So if I press Command and semicolon, we can turn that off. And then just press those same keys again to turn them back on. And there you have your 20 hotkeys. Like I said at the beginning of this video, yes, there are plenty of others that you should know as well. These are the ones that I just happen to use most often and I think you should know. I highly encourage you to start using these all the time and as often as you can, just to help build up that muscle memory, because I can promise you it will really speed up your workflow overall. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. I hope you got some use out of it, and I hope to see you again for tomorrow's video. In the meantime, take care everybody.